Hey, Taylor here with Sievers Blumen Farm. I'm out here sweating my ASS off. It is early July and getting I just spent some time in the tunnel putting in some irrigation, but I wanted to show you some really pretty Lisianthus. This is I guess we'll call it Rose of Summer, even though roses bloom in the summer too. But they are very, very pretty. A lot of people mistake these for roses and bouquets, but they're actually a prairie wildflower. A lot of you guys may not know about this plant. It is native to Texas, the Texas region, Great Plains and all of that. So in the wild, they're mostly like purple and blue tones, and they are kind of like a hardy annual or a biennial in habit. Really known for being in those, they like sandier soils basically. So that's why they make a great crop to put in the tunnel in the summertime, because the petals can be damaged and they can also flop over a little bit in the wind. But they love the heat and they love the sunshine, and there is plenty of that in the tunnel at this time of year. They also like to be cool, so you can, they do like to have their roots established in the cool temperatures. They can be a little bit tricky to get started. That is my Lisianthus. So in about a month, I should be seeing my first blooms. You can tell that I have different varieties because further down they're smaller, and closer up here they're starting to really take off. I started these all from seed, and some people order plugs because they're really difficult to grow from seed, and I've had good luck with growing from seed somewhat. You know, like they ended up growing, you know, they're a little bit later than the plugs. I am torn on whether I should just go ahead and start ordering plugs or not. Part of the reason is that I run out of growing space if I'm growing a lot of other things, but if I'm just going to be focusing on Lisianthus or some major crops, then I don't really need all the indoor growing space that I have with my basement setup. So this usually does really well for me. I'm just growing them by seed. They did get a little bit of a rough start because it's been so hot. But I've been watering them a lot, and they're finally starting to take off here in the front. So in about a month, I should be seeing my first blooms. I wanted to kind of take you through the process of how I grow all of my Lisianthus from seed. So they are really notoriously hard to grow from seed, and I wanted to take you through that process. I'm not 100% perfect, and every year I kind of mess up on something. But I just wanted to share my thoughts on it and see if it would help another person out there who's either wanting to get started growing them or just needs a little bit of extra help. So first off, the seeds are super, super tiny. So when you order them from a seed supplier, they'll often be pelleted. And that's just so they're easier to work with, basically, because they're kind of like dust almost. So I will get them, and then I start all my seeds in January, and actually this year I'm going to experiment with starting them in December, because they do like that cool period to establish their root systems, and it seems like they're not big enough for me to plant them out in the tunnel in time for them to, when they're super small, I'm afraid that the irrigation water is not going to get to the root systems as well, because, you know, I have them planted really close together, but I don't want to plant them when they're super, super small, even though I've had some survive when I put them out there. And they will survive through a couple like light frosts and stuff like that. So I'm shooting to get mine out, you know, before April 20th, which is my estimated last frost. I'm shooting to get them out like earlier in April, but I think I could even do it sooner, like a month before, you know, late March. So especially with the tunnel. So I'm really trying to bump that up. So I think if I start them in December this year, that will help. It just gets so hot here in the spring. But anyways, I started them from seeds. They, they're pelleted, so I like to mist them once I put them on the soil surface of either the cell trays or the soil blocks. I've done both. And then I'll cover that with a humidity dome or saran wrap until they germinate. It takes about a couple weeks for them to get going, and sometimes I might like mist them again if, especially if I have a humidity dome, if I feel like, sometimes the edges get dried out and all that. But the difficult time, like the hard part is not germination for me. Sometimes you are like, when are they going to germinate? And you have to take a magnifying glass and look because they're so tiny, but they're there. Really hard to keep them from like rotting or drying out because they're so tiny. Their root systems are so tiny that you need to make sure that they have a lot of moisture, but what you'll find is that you're going to get a lot of algae on top of the trays. And so I mitigate that by applying cinnamon on top. I mostly do the cinnamon when it gets like, I guess I shouldn't say algae, but when it gets moldy, so the algae I don't mind as much. I try to get it to dry out a little bit after that, but and usually you can kind of scrape the dried algae off the top, but it's really the moldy parts that become a problem. So that is most difficult. So from January until March, it's a struggle sometimes. And then all of a sudden they take off. They just start taking off and they start growing. And then by July, I have blooms. And usually I don't cut the first bloom because I usually just snip that off because it's such a short stem. And there's still a lot of buds up above that are getting ready to form, so I kind of leave those. But they have an outstanding vase life. They are so beautiful in arrangements and bouquets. I absolutely love them. They kind of look like roses. Some of them have more wavy petals than others. They come in all these beautiful, beautiful colors. They're just fantastic. And so I'm really excited. This is mid-August. I have a wedding in the next week, and I have so many of these apricot and like pale yellow colors that I'm so excited to use. And I know they're going to hold up well in the bouquets because these guys have outstanding vase life. You can kind of leave them out of water for a little bit, and they're pretty good. So I highly recommend to anyone that you should try growing them. But if you're nervous about starting them from seed, maybe try a couple starting from seed and then maybe order a tray of plugs or go in with a friend on that because it's kind of worth it. Unfortunately around here, so I'm in the St. Louis region in the Illinois side, but in the Midwest, you can't just go to a nursery and buy extra Lisianthus starts. You have to order them online and get them shipped in usually, or start them from seed yourself. So that's why you don't see these. They're not as common in like a home garden or anything like that. I'm sure if you live down in Texas, maybe you could go to your local nursery center, since these are like, these are just cultivars of like a native plant down there. But I've really enjoyed growing these. They have been the bomb. And I did not grow them the first year, but like after the second year, I was like, I will be growing these from now on, even if I don't flower farm. Like, I think I'll just find a spot for them. So for me, where Lisianthus is going to fit in with my production, well, at least where it is now and then in the future. So from now, these are great for the summer bouquet. I always had bouquet subscriptions, so these were fantastic. And usually I just kind of get tired of sunflowers after a while. People love them, but I get tired of them. And the colors are just so beautiful with these. I just really enjoy them. But there's been some times where the Lisianthus has really saved my butt too, because if I didn't time my successions right with my sunflowers. So they've been really awesome. And then just to mix it up, and it is a little bit more of a special flower than like maybe a zinnia or a sunflower in a bouquet. It's something special that you can provide your customers. If you are a smaller flower farm, somewhere. And again, the vase life is outstanding. But, as I've been thinking more and adding more cutting roses to my operation, this time of year, I really have a lot of problems with like Japanese beetles on my roses, just in my landscaping. And so what I do notice is these don't really get bothered by Japanese beetles. They don't really get bothered by anything. So, at least for me. Maybe some caterpillars. But, so what I'm thinking is a lot of people with their roses anyways is the summertime, they kind of just like cut the roses back and wait for the big fall flush. And so I think that's what my goal is. Like these definitely serve the purpose of a rose. They can be a focal, they are beautiful, they have a lot of different colors, and they hold up really well in a vase. So that's kind of my thoughts is keep Lisianthus in the rotation, and they can be my summer rose, and then focus on the spring and the fall for the cutting roses. I think that's my goal going forward, rather than battling through the heat. A lot of times the roses get stressed during the summertime, and with little rainfall and all that, and these guys just thrive. So that is why Lisianthus will forever have my heart, and I encourage you guys to grow them. Just a little note, I have tried growing them in soil blocks and in the trays, and I've had mixed success with each. I did feel like with the soil blocks I had larger plants sooner for some reason, and I don't know if that's because I was better at managing I checked on them more because they were soil blocks versus the trays. I'm not as diligent about going down there to check and to water and all of that, so I'm wondering why that is, or if it has something to do with the way soil blocks are known for air pruning, and if that was good for the long root system of the Lisianthus. I'm not really sure, but what I ended up having to do is I did have to bump up from the little 3/4 inch soil blocks into the larger, I think it's a 2-inch block. So I had to do that, but they were really healthy plants whenever I put them in the ground, and they did awesome. So those are just my notes on growing Lisianthus. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop a comment below. I would love to answer them. If you like this video, please share it with a friend and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you guys.